Justin here, back for more into the CD collection. You may have noticed I'm somewhere different. I'm in the same room as my CD collection, but I'm now sitting on the sofa. It's a little more comfortable. We'll see how this works out. So first we are listening to Ascended. This is a cassette tape that came out on D-Test Records back in 2009, I think. This is Temple of Dark Offerings. To the best of my knowledge, this was all they ever did. They were a Finnish death metal band. I believe they were real young guys too. But this came out on tape, CD, and LP. And then they kind of disappeared, and I don't know what happened to them. D-Test Records ended not long after, and they put out some really good stuff when they were around. But this is just 4 songs. This is good, dark Finnish death metal. So, if you ever see this, pick it up. Okay, we're going to finish out the Bees, and then we'll go from there. So first up, we have Breath of Sorrows. This is Through Darkness to Battle I Ride. This came out on Wraith Productions. This was Wraith 02. Wraith Productions is a label out of Florida. The first black metal band I was ever in. We put out a release. We put out a CD on Wraith. So I was pretty close with the guys behind this label back in the early days. And Breath of Sorrows was from Las Vegas. And it's 2 guys, Belial and Scorpius. And I feel like I knew one of them, but I can't remember who they are. But this is pretty standard US black metal. Lots of songs here. I remember it being kind of all over the place. I haven't listened to this in years and years and years. There's a Rocky Erickson cover on here. Intros and outros. But I do not have the CD. And I have no idea where it is. I just noticed that when I opened it up. But I'll have to go pull this up on YouTube and recall what Breath of Sorrows sounds like. I don't think they're around anymore, but I could be wrong. I'm not sure. Next, we have another soundtrack. This is the score, the soundtrack to Brotherhood of the Wolf. Brotherhood of the Wolf is a kind of horror movie, kind of mystery movie, all based around the legend of the Beast of Gévaudan. It's the story of a small town in France that's being terrorized by a beast, and a naturalist and his American Indian sidekick come into town to figure it out, and they kick a lot of ass along the way. A lot of martial arts in this movie, but it's not a martial arts movie. But the soundtrack to this is got lots of classical guitar in it. It's really somber. It's really morose sounding. It's just a really fucking killer soundtrack by Joseph Loduca. And I can't recall off the top of my head anything else he's done. But I know there's something else like big that he did the music to. Maybe Army of Darkness, but I may be wrong. But the soundtrack to Brotherhood of the Wolf is awesome, and the movie Brotherhood of the Wolf is fucking awesome. It's just this killer fucking thriller mystery movie set in the 1800s in the French countryside. Funny story, this movie came out in 2001, and it wasn't released theatrically in the States, but I had read about it somewhere, maybe Rue Morgue magazine or something, and I was looking forward to seeing it. And I worked at a video store at the time, and this guy, who I actually went to high school with, but I don't think he was putting together that he knew me from high school, would come in every couple of days and ask, do you have Brotherhood of the Wolf? Do you have Brotherhood of the Wolf? Like, no, it's supposed to come out in June, and then it didn't. And it's supposed to come out in July, and it didn't. It's supposed to come out in August, and it didn't. And we finally got copies of it on VHS in, like, October that year. And we got like 10 VHS copies, and they were all in French with English subtitles. And he finally showed up to get it, and he was so bummed that it wasn't in English. That he was so fucking butthurt over it because he was going to have to read the subtitles. And it made me laugh inside so hard. But, killer movie, killer soundtrack. Check it out if you're not familiar with it. Next up, we have Broken Hope, Swamped in Gore. This is the only Broken Hope album on CD I own. I have the Bowels of Repugnance on cassette tape. But Broken Hope, they're, you know, kind of a guttural, brutal death metal band from Chicago. They've been around forever. This came out in 95. Yeah, 1995. This was actually an early album. This was, Swamp and Gore was their first album. This is a re-release on Metal Blade after they got signed to Metal Blade. I still think this edition is pretty old. But Broken Hope was always kind of mid-paced to slower. Lots of groove, lots of chunk in their sound. But Joe Pacek, however you said his name, he was just really, really fucking awesome, gurgly vocalist. And he had a really, really unique style and a really kind of patented sound to his voice. He took his own life a few years ago, but Broken Hope, of course, you may know, they're back. They put out a couple of comeback records, and I haven't listened to them, but I've got it on good record that they're actually really, really, really good brutal death metal records. And they're playing big shows all over the world, so they seem to be really doing it. I first learned about Broken Hope. I bought the tape, Bowels of Repugnance, at our local, like, big mall CD store when I was in high school. It was, every so often they do these sidewalk sales in the mall where they put a table out front with a bunch of cheap shit on it, and one day that was out there for 99 cents. And I didn't know Broken Hope, but it looked like a death metal record, a death metal tape, so I picked it up. And I've liked Broken Hope ever since. I like the early stuff. They had a record come out in 99 or so, and I can't remember the name of it. It had fire on the cover, but it was fucking terrible. And I ended up selling it on eBay. Early Broken Hope, awesome. Swamp and Gore. Next we have Brujeria, however you want to say it. Matando Gueros. Of course, Brujeria is a Mexican grind band. One of those bands that has lots of mystery and stories behind them, and it's all kind of made up BS. But they're just a really sick fucking grind band, and this record, it's the only one I have by them, but I've been meaning to pick up more of their stuff. I really like Old Brujeria. But this is just good, solid, fucking chunky, nasty grind. It's all about drugs and fucking chopping people's heads off. But it's great. It's good fucking grind stuff. Speaking of grind, we also have Brutal Truth. This is Evolution Through Revolution. I don't know shit about Brutal Truth. I've never been a big fan. This was given to me. Yep, it's another Relapse release. And you may have, I mentioned several videos ago that one time my band was on Relapse and they sent me a box of CDs. It's kind of like, hey, welcome to the label, and this was in there. And I don't think I've listened to this once or twice because it's open, but I mean, Brutal Truth, they're a grind band, and they're pretty, to me, they never did much for me, so I'm just not real into them. You might catch me on the right day, I'll like it. So next we have something that's not metal. I mentioned on my first new stuff video that I had bought a Buck Owens record. I really, really like Buck Owens, who's an old country singer. And this is a CD called Dwight Sings Buck. And this is a collection of covers by Dwight Yoakam doing Buck Owens covers. This came out in 2007. Buck Owens and Dwight Yoakam were both from Bakersfield, California, and they kind of perfected the Bakersfield country music sound. And this was just Dwight paying homage to Buck Owens' songs, and it's really, really, really fucking killer. I have it on vinyl as well, and it's basically a greatest hits of Buck Owens songs done by Dwight Yoakam, and they all sound fucking perfect. And if you like old kind of country western music, this is a good one. This is a real, real, real fucking good one. Okay, next we have a split between Bunker and Bludgeon. No, I take that back. This is a Bunker album called Bludgeon. I was confusing two things. Bunker's a doom band, kind of a black doom band. This came out on Nuclear War Now. I remember this being really slow and really raw sounding. I've listened to it once or twice. I want to say that it's only got like 3 or 4 songs on it, but they're all really, really long. But they have, I think there's a split coming out with another band. Bunker's doing a split soon. That's what I got confused about. But yeah, this is called Bludgeon. Came out several years ago. And it's kind of black doom, to the best of my knowledge. Alright, we have another sealed CD. This is Burial. This is Divinity Through Eradication. I got this in that giant trade I talk about in every single video. I got a bunch of death metal stuff in a big trade, and I'm still wading through it several years later. This came out on Metal Wrestling Alliance Records. That sounds really fucking stupid. Sidebar. What's the deal with fucking professional wrestling? That shit's stupid. I mean, that's the only way I can put it. And I like plenty of dumb shit. But getting into professional wrestling and the way I see people post about it and talk about it that are so fucking into it, I just don't get it. It's so fucking dumb. That's just me, though. So I watched it as a kid, as a teenager. But then when I was like 16 years old, I was like, this shit's fucking stupid. So, I don't know. Back to the metal. This is called Burial. It's probably brutal death metal. I'll have to open it up and check it out. Then we have Burial Invocation. This is an early Dark Descent release. Rituals of the Grotesque. I can't remember if this was their demo and then it was professionally released, or if this was an EP they did. But this came out in 2010. Burial Invocation, I believe, are from Turkey, and they are back together now. But they play kind of heavy, gloomy, doomy death metal. The kind of death metal has been real popular the last few years. But I always really liked this. I'll have to put it on and reacquaint myself with it. But as far as I know, this might be pretty rare these days. But Burial Invocation. Okay, we are at the end of the Bees. Finally, 11 videos in. And so next is a very controversial band. Some of you may be able to guess who it is now that we're at the end of the Bees. Burzum. I love Burzum. And it took me years and years and years to really open up to Burzum. Mayhem was one of the first black metal bands I ever got into, which Mayhem's probably one of the first black metal bands a lot of black metal fans got into. They were definitely one of the more widely known bands in the mainstream metal scene. And I remember being like 15 and sitting in my school's computer lab. So when I was in high school, you didn't have computers in every classroom. You had computers in the computer lab. And you may or may not have had the internet. But I remember sitting on the computer, searching, reading about Mayhem and Norwegian black metal and church burnings and Burzum. And this is only a couple of years removed from that happening. This was probably 1996. So all that was really fresh in the scene. And I listened to Mayhem for years. I remember talking with a friend of mine, probably 2000 or so. And I was like, well, what about Burzum? Have you ever listened to Burzum? And this is before you could just click on YouTube and listen to a band, or go to Bandcamp and listen to a band. Like, MP3s weren't just readily available 20 years ago. You couldn't just listen to anything and check it out. If you wanted to hear Burzum, you had to buy a Burzum record and listen to it. And this buddy of mine said, he said, I don't feel right listening to Burzum and being a Mayhem fan because of the whole Varg and Euronymous thing. And I was like, that makes sense, I guess. And I probably went 4 or 5 more years with never checking out Burzum. And I made that same statement to someone who asked me if I liked Burzum. And I said, well, I can't really listen to Burzum and call myself a Mayhem fan. And he was like, that's fucking stupid. I was like, yeah, that's kind of stupid. So then I listened to Burzum. And Burzum's fucking incredible. And I had some conversation with someone the other day who said that Burzum never has clicked with him. He thinks it's kind of boring, and I can see that. I mean, if you look at Philosophum, there are songs on here where he plays riffs like 36 measures, 48 measures. It's real repetitive, and you kind of lock into this trance, and you lock into this groove, and you can just keep it going. But Burzum, Varg's sound was trend-setting and iconic, and you know, it set a bar, it set a standard that people are still trying to hit. And the best thing about Burzum is that he never overdid it. He never tried to be the fastest. He never tried to be the heaviest. He never tried to be the most evil. But Burzum's just incredibly unique. And I know people have problems with his kind of outlook on things. I'm not going to say his politics. More than anything, Varg seems pretty apolitical to me. But none of that is in the music, you know. He's singing about nature, and he's singing about darkness, and he's singing about misanthropy and destruction, and Lord of the Rings. And it's some of the darkest, grimmest, rawest, most emotional black metal that's ever been created. I only have 2 Burzum CDs. Of course, I have Philosophum, which is my favorite Burzum album. And then I have this bootleg called Stemmen fra Tarnet, which has Lost Wisdom, Spell of Destruction, Channeling the Power of Souls into a New God, all the early stuff. And I think this is like alternate versions or something. And this came out on Northern Twilight Records. This is a nice little digipack, real simple, but this CD is absolutely unlistenable. When you put it in, you can't hear anything. So if you turn it way up, you can hear the songs, and you've got to know what these Burzum songs are to be able to hear what's going on. But you've got to turn it up to a point that it all gets staticky because it's so loud. But why someone would spend money to press this and it sounds so fucking terrible is beyond me. But aside from these 2 CDs, I have every Burzum album on vinyl. I don't have original Death Like Silence editions or anything. I've got older versions of them that I've had for several years, aside from the Vis Licitarios record that I just bought finally. But I have all the Burzum stuff on vinyl. I've been a big Burzum fan for many years now. After being trepidatious about listening to them, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. But I might do a Burzum video and talk about the vinyl. But I've already kind of talked about how much I like Burzum and why I like Burzum. And I don't want this to discredit my love for Mayhem, because I love Mayhem just as much. Mayhem and Burzum are 2 bands to me that really help define with me what black metal is and what black metal means to me. And I might do a video talking about the black metal records that really inspired me as a black metal musician and as a black metal fan. Anyway, Burzum. Love Burzum. We're at the end of the B's. Let's talk about it. We're going to do another video here in a minute. We'll start with the C's and keep it going. So let's keep commenting, subscribing, liking, talking. I'm enjoying it. I love talking about metal with everybody. So let's keep it going. Talk to you guys later.